How's it going, folks? So today I'm going to be talking about the new upcoming album from the band Oryad, and the name of this album is Sacred and Profane. This bad boy comes out May 25th, but y'all know it by now. Before I get into that nitty gritty, let's check out the cover. So boom, there it is. Take a look at this cover. Really, really, really cool. I always like when there's something that draws the eye in. No pun intended with there being an eye like right in the center, but it just dawned on me there. But yeah, it's really, really cool because you have this kind of ornate decorations around it with these animals and wings and all this, and then even outside of that is some kind of like this ornate border, and it almost makes the whole thing look like some sort of badge or just emblem or coin, even maybe that's an antique or archaic or something like that. It's just really, really cool. I love the designs around the surrounding all of it. And then there in the center, you have this hand with the eye and these clouds, and it just really pulls you in, and it's just so ornate. Like, that's the best way I can say it, and I really dig it. There's a lot of symbolism in here, obviously, and it's something, if you're looking through at the record shop, it's gonna catch your eye. Again, no puns intended here, folks, when I say I. Just get that out of the way right now. But and even the way the band name is stylized down there, Oryad, with the Y being the antlers of the stag, and it's just neat. And then Sacred and Profane, just above like the hand, that symbolism there in the middle. Again, it just really makes it seem like some kind of really cool, again, just archaic, antique badge or logo or emblem or seal or something like that. It's really neat the way it's designed. So aesthetically, I dig it. I really, really dig this cover. It's classy. It definitely conjures up certain feeling and mood. Very earthy, nature focused. It's just neat. Really, really neat. With there being symbolism beyond that, it's just really, really cool. I really, really dig it. Now, as far as if you were to just buy this album from the record shop because you like the cover, but you'd never heard of the band before, and you're not quite sure what it sounds like, does the cover properly convey the sound that you're going to get on the album? I think for the most part, it really does, because there's a lot going on here. And again, there's a lot of moods and feelings being evoked from this cover. So if I were to just see this, and I was like in the metal section, of course, but even if not in the metal section, I think you would assume this is probably metal of some kind. My first thought would probably be maybe black metal, maybe some folk metal, not necessarily symphonic, but maybe black folk, a little dark perhaps, again with the themes predominantly possibly having to do with nature and things of that sort. And no, it's not a black metal album or a folk metal album. It has elements of multiple styles, and so I don't think you would buy this, get home, and be surprised by the sound, because it is kind of dark, it is kind of doomy, and there are hints of black and folk metal, I would say, especially with some of the themes and the way it is, and heavily on the symphonic metal side as well. So it's a very unique sound, a very unique style that can't fit into just one genre. So I feel like this cover does do a good job of conveying the general idea of what you can expect. And like I said, it's not like you're going to be totally wrong by what you assume by this, unless you think it's just straight up like death metal. But I think there's more to it than that based off what the cover conveys. So yeah, it's a tough one to call there, but again, I don't think you would be shocked or anything, and the sound fits the cover very well. So yeah, all in all, I really dig this cover. Really, really cool. Really, really cool. I like it a lot. Now for the album itself. Like I said, this comes out May 25th. It's got 10 songs on this album here and comes in at about 45 minutes. So it's a solid length with a solid amount of tracks. It kind of fits right there in the sweet spot for me as far as that goes. It's concise. There's no bloat. It feels very natural the way it progresses all the way through till the end, and everything belongs there, and it's the way it's meant to be, and that's what I like. You know, you're not left feeling like, oh, you got gypped, like there should be more, but you also don't sit there feeling like you're hearing the same thing over and over again just to pad out the length. It all serves its purpose. It's all meant to be there, and it sounds like it all belongs, and it's a concise album. So again, kind of talking about the sound of this band. It's funny, I actually spoke to Moira of the band at a Ranger Talk, so check that out if you want to hear more of the behind the scenes of the album, and some really interesting thoughts and details about it, as well as her background and things like that, her approach. Really, really fascinating chat. But they somewhat describe themselves as progressive doom opera metal. You know, I believe that's the gist of it. And yes, all of that fits very well. There are certainly some doom elements, there are some progressive elements. The operatic side comes a lot from the vocals, but also in the songwriting, the arrangements, especially some of the symphonic elements, and you know, and piano, which I'll talk about later. It all lends itself well to an operatic style. But Moira told me that they've also been classified as mystic metal, and that's a very fitting description as well. But it's very difficult to just say, here's the description of this band, boom, that's it, because there's a lot going on here. Like I said, there's elements of doom. There's a lot of symphonic metal influences. There's actually a little bit more symphonic metal side than I thought, just based off some of the descriptions of the band and the sound. So that was very welcomed. You know, I would say there was a lot of symphonic metal in there with some doom, and again with a little bit of folk and some progressive elements, and kind of in an operatic style, operatic setting in a sense. So that's really the best way I can describe it. It's pretty heavy. A lot of it tends to have a little bit of a dark flair, you know, almost gothic kind of flair to it. But that darkness, it comes from that earthiness, you know, that focus on nature, and kind of the not like pagan necessarily, but just it kind of has that feeling to it. So it's not like a bright and cheery album, that's for sure. But there are lighter moments, there are lighter songs, but there is a lot that is it's kind of dark in a sense, and that's where some of the doom comes along. But yeah, it's just a really, really cool, unique sound, and they just create what they feel, and you get that. You know, it's a definite takeaway as you're listening to it, that they're not trying to be one thing or the other. They are just creating what they feel like, and that's the music and style that you get. And what it really does in doing so is it creates an experience. Not every album is what I would consider to be an experience. It can be a phenomenal album, but being really good, or just good in general, and being an experience are two separate things, because you can also have an album that's an experience but not be that great, and you could have an album that's absolutely phenomenal but not be what I would consider as an experience. This is very immersive, and you get immersed in the sound, and it just creates, again, it's very emotive through the music, the lyrics, and the vocals, and it comes through. That sound comes through as you're listening, and it just evokes feelings of your own, and that is something that is difficult to achieve, I would say, and that is something that one of those things I really, really appreciate, and that's here in this album is you feel it, and it's an experience. It's a wonderful soundscape that, again, it just conjures images, it conjures moods and feelings, even if you took away the lyrics entirely and she was just kind of singing, just not words, just a melody. You would still get a lot of the feeling, and that's really important. But then you throw the lyrics on top of it, and that gives it an even deeper meaning. And so it's just very, very well crafted. And from beginning to end, everything is very deliberate. Everything has its place, and there's a lot of movement throughout this whole thing. And again, I would say that is where a lot of the operatic flair comes into play, as well as Moira's classical training, and other folks in this band have very classical backgrounds, whether it's classical operatic or a classical kind of jazz or things like that. It's very deep, their knowledge and training, and in a lot of these genres that just have a lot of movement throughout, like I said, jazz and opera and things like that. So the arrangements and things, this whole album just, it's like movements all the way throughout. It's almost like one whole full classical piece, like an opera, but then you throw in these darker elements like doom and progressive, and then with symphonic elements to really add some bombast to it and things like that. And the lyrics tend to be a bit heavy as well. So it's just, that's why I say it's an experience. It really is. The guitar work is really, really solid. The guitars tend to be nice and chuggy, nice and heavy, and almost, I wouldn't go so far as to say as dirty, but they're gritty. They're gritty, and again, I equate that to the whole feeling of this earthiness almost, and the guitar work is, it's thundering. It's very grounded and heavy in most regards, and the sound, I love the tone of the guitars and the riffs, and the guitars just play a really cool role. That's another thing. All the instruments, all of the arrangements of the voice and everything play a role in the sound that's being created. It's not just all focused on, oh, this one thing. This is like, I couldn't say that this album is guitar driven. I couldn't say it's symphonic driven or vocal driven. Although if I had to pick, I would say it is very vocal melody driven. The vocals do carry a lot of the weight, but I can't pick just one thing. I just can't and say that specific instrument driven, because everything serves a role and creates the sound, and like I said, the experience that you get through the movements throughout this album. Again, it's almost not like they're songs, it's just movements throughout one entire piece. And I love that, when an album is like that, it flows just that way too. It's tough to kind of cherry pick a song out and say, just listen to this song, because it all fits. It's like a puzzle, and each piece is so important to the whole picture that it just deserves and begs to be listened to from beginning to end. The entire album, not just one song or two or what have you, even though they all stand alone really well. But you got to hear it as it all progresses all the way through. So yeah, that's the guitars, and the bass gets some time to shine too. There's moments where the bass is chugging so heavy and so hard, it's like slapping. You can hear the strings vibrating almost as they clang against the fretboard, and it just, oh man, it's just such a powerful thundering sound. The drum work is really, really solid, because again, with these movements and a lot of these intricate arrangements, the drums, they do a really solid job of keeping with that, but almost feeling natural as well, and very organic as it flows along with the music. And you can't just have your basic just drum beats, all the way through. It has to adapt, and it does so very well. And then the symphonic elements are put in there with just such attention to detail that it all the symphonic elements aren't just there just for bombast. No, they help create the special moments. They help enhance the sound or elevate the sound or contribute to the mood or the feeling. It's not just let's throw some strings in there because we can. No, everything, like I said, serves a purpose. You know, there's some brass in there that's sick and it just really, really well done and orchestrated. And again, the songwriting here is just the attention to detail is immaculate. You know, just such care has been put into every little moment of this album. And one thing I really, really wanted to talk about, which everything is awesome, but one thing in particular just I loved was the piano work. Oh, it is just gorgeous. There are some beautiful piano melodies throughout this album, and it's exquisite. It just lovely, just wonderful, wonderful piano work. I constantly found myself just stopping during some of these piano moments and just being swept away in it. It just really, really great stuff. And vocals, what a voice, and what a range. Such control over the delivery on the lyrics and the vocal melody, knowing how to again just deliver the lines depending on what the song demands or what the moment demands or what the lyrics kind of demand. And at times a little lower and heavier vocals, but then she can really get into that operatic style. And a lot of the time is, I would say, spent in somewhat of a operatic style vocals, but she also has a range that extends well beyond that as well, and that just contributes to the movements, you know, the moving nature of the album, and just really being able to kind of go with the moment and the flow and just contribute her voice to just enhance whatever is happening, enhance the sound or the mood or the feeling. And like I said, her range is just extraordinary, and her ability to adjust her voice depending on the situation or circumstance to better suit the sound or the intention of perhaps of the lyrics or even just the intention of the music at the moment. Just expert level stuff here. So it starts out warming you up into the album and getting you into that mindset really well with the first track, The Path Part 1. And then you get to one of my favorite tracks, which is track 3, Blood. And it just, this song, that there's so much going on in it, and it's so intricate, but also has bombast, and you get some of the piano in there, and the vocals just really soar, and it's got some heavy moments. It's one of the most singularly dynamic songs on the whole album, I would have to say. And I'll mention this song again in a little bit. And then you get track 4, Lilith, which is one of the most beautiful songs on the album, in my opinion. It's just a lovely, almost ballad-like, ethereal kind of song with, again, the music, the symphonics just really lending itself well to create this almost, I really can't think of the right word, but just ethereal or magical sound. And it's just such a gorgeous, gorgeous song. Track 6, Alchemy, is really, really neat, because then this one introduces almost like a jazzy or bluesy kind of vibe and feeling, and just like further shows the band's capacity at handling lots of different styles and influences, but weaving them into this one cohesive album and sound. And it's a really groovy, like I said, very bluesy kind of jazz oriented song, but again, that fits within the darker, progressive, almost doom kind of sound of the rest of the album. Really, really neat. And track 9, Slice of Time, is just such epic and awesome send out, I would say, for the album. Just such an epic, I can't say conclusion because it's not the final track, but it somewhat serves to me as the final big like climax or bombastic, grand kind of moment. And then track 10, The Path Part 2, kind of eases you out of the album, just kind of the way the Path Part 1 eased you in. So it all kind of really comes full circle. And it's just so well done, so well done. And the melodies are lovely, and I just found myself hanging on every note, whether it be musically or vocally, as I was just swept through this thing, and I had to listen to it again. And that's why I say it really is an experience. It's a very unique album. Again, I would say a lot of symphonic metal in there, but then you have all these other influences that really make it its own thing. And I was thinking to myself while I was listening to it, and this is the sort of album that I would say is a privilege as a listener to be able to hear it. You know, it really it's a privilege to be able to listen to an album like this because of the experience it creates and the soundscapes and the movements and the attention to detail through every note involved. I just it's really a phenomenal piece, and to think this is their debut full-length album, absolutely remarkable. Absolutely remarkable. It is an album that is not to be missed. If you like metal in general, I highly recommend this album, but especially if you're into symphonic metal or you like a little bit of doom or progressive or things like that, this really be right down your alley. It just, this is an album that just has to be heard and not described. And I just spent the last however many minutes describing it, but that's with the intention of getting y'all to listen to it because it deserves to be heard. It really deserves to be heard. It is something special here, and I was quite blown away by it. And one of the last things that I like to say is, if I were to recommend one song for y'all to listen to, if you're like, tell me one song to listen to decide if I want to hear the whole album or not, I would say go with track 3, Blood. I really think, like I said before, I think that's the most singularly dynamic song, perhaps. And it has a lot of the elements within that one song that you'll find woven throughout the rest of the album. So it really gives you a good impression of what the album holds and what to expect. And if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure that song Blood is going to be released as a single the day the album drops, which is again May 25th. So yeah, if you just want a taste to decide if you want to have the, hear the whole thing, check out Blood. That's my recommendation. But I can't recommend this album enough. I really can't. Like I said, this is Oryad with their debut full-length album called Sacred and Profane. Drops May 25th. Do not miss it, folks. Once you've heard it, let me know what you think of it in the comments down below. If you've listened to the singles so far, which have been Eve and Scorched Earth, let me know what you thought of those. Check out my chat I had with Moira of Oryad to get a little bit of behind the scenes details and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, listen to this bad boy and let me know what y'all think of it. But thank y'all so much for tuning in, and I'll catch you next time. Ranger.